Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Heartland Franchise Guy podcast, your insider's guide to franchises in the Heartland area. I'm Blake Martin, local small business franchise owner, and your Heartland Franchise Guy. This is the place for education, resources, and advocacy for our local franchising field and for local entrepreneurs looking to learn about the franchising field. And our guest today is Alan Hager. So Alan's back with us for part 2 of our interview, episode number 2 with Alan Hager. And if you recall, we like that we're getting the unvarnished truth from Alan because he's retired from the franchising field, has sold out interest. And as Alan told me one time, if you really want the truth about a profession, ask the retired gal or the retired guy because they got nothing to lose. So that being said, Mr. Retired, let's say you drive home from here and your lovely wife Vivian says, Alan, it's been wonderful having you as a retired husband, but you got to get out of here more often. You are in my hair.
Has she been talking to you?
Well, I'm not saying anything. I can't disclose that information here.
I mean, with COVID and everything, close is good, but too close is not good, right? That's right. So I've heard something along those lines.
Outstanding points.
That's right.
Well, let's just take that to its next logical conclusion. And she says, go start a business. And of course, you would look at franchises. If there was a business that you would look at, what might it be? If there was a category, you don't have to get specific on brands, obviously. Maybe you're already investing in them, who knows? But if there was a category that is really of interest to you right now, where might you start?
Well, I'll just share one I'm actually interested in.
Please do.
One of the things that, obviously healthcare is the spot that I feel most comfortable in. And I've served on boards and other things and have stayed active that way and have been looking at where things are going. And I think like a lot of businesses, COVID and all the fallout from that has caused a lot of us to step back and say, okay, how does the future, there's a little kink in whatever lines there were that said things are going this way or that thing, that the lines have begun to diverge a little bit, I believe, on a lot of cultural, technological, and just human elements right now. And I think that always creates opportunity. And one of the things that I have seen out there that I think, and I think it's related to the business that we've been in. The reality is with aging, and aging in place and so forth, and we've seen that COVID has hit, older people much harder. Yeah. But when you really look at where things are going in the developed world, not just the United States, there really is a massive number of people living well into their 80s and 90s. The challenge is a good percentage of them, and we took care of those guys, have tremendous disabilities. So even though they got long life, it's not too good, right?
Yeah.
So there's a whole range of things in medicine right now. And I mean, just, there's biometrics, there's the hormonal replacement, there's just a staggering number of DNA kinds of things that are going on where they're looking at how do your final years, whether to, my buddies and I talk about now, are we in the late part of the third quarter or the early part of the fourth quarter, right? And the key thing is you don't want to be in sudden death overtime. But there's a whole massive number of us out here going, hey, I'm 64, and God willing, and a little bit of luck, and I look at where my family has gone, I could live to be 85, 90, and maybe even be productive. We see it all around us. But we also see those that don't go that way. Well, what if there were services that could help that huge group actually have a plan to just as you get you get education if you want to go this direction rather than that. You do exercise if you want to do this rather than that. What if there were a range of services that one could access that gave you a much higher chance of aging successfully and being vital into your late years? I think that would be an incredible solution for a lot of people that they would be willing to part with their hard-earned money for. And so there are things that are being developed out there right now. And anyway, that's one for me. Again, I think because it's healthcare related, it fits in a franchise model potentially, just because it would have to be a locally sourced service.
Gotcha. So on the topic of Alan's crystal ball, because that wasn't the answer I expected from you. It was a good answer. It wasn't the answer I expected. What do you see in the future of senior services, globally speaking?
There's going to be things that we haven't even thought about right now. I mean, I've been going to technology meetings over the last several years, not the last year, but certainly in the last years of my tenure with Right at Home, and seeing the amount of work that's being done at the top universities in the United States, really the whole world right now, and the amount of work that's going into the very thing that we just talked about. How can we take care of the people that are going to need the care at an acceptable cost to society? It's a fundamentally staggering issue. I mean, you take a country like China, they're going to have 400 million people over age 60 coming up here very soon. Then just think about that for a second. Bigger than the population of the United States. So the stakes are obviously huge. We have to come up with new solutions. It's not just the universities. You've got think tanks, you've got governments, you've got large business industries across the spectrum. Everything from the drug companies to the technology companies and others. Apple, Amazon, all the big players. And the reality is, it probably won't be one of them that's the most successful. It's going to be someone with a great idea that figured out a solution and really worked on it and then began to build it up that's going to really make that successful.
Well, if you got another 30 minutes, we can do a second episode and we can just solve that while we're here.
Okay, we'll just solve the whole thing.
Perfect. The sister question to the question I asked you about the future of senior services, what do you see in the future of franchising? What do you see franchising? How do you see franchising changing, or what's going to be important in franchising the next 10, 20 years?
I'm hugely bullish on franchising. The reality is it fits the emerging young generation of people that I talk to. There's so many of them. And again, this is one of those things that shifted a little bit with COVID even. But it was already coming on. With the technology tools available, with the education level of folks, with just how much you can actually, how productive you can be with all the tools that are available to us now, and just with the mindset that folks have, I think you're going to see more and more of this arise. And why franchising, I think, is going to be a part of that is because as a model, I've never seen anything better as a business model. Business is hard. Right? Mm-hmm. Let's face it, day in and day out, sometimes it's a grind. You got a lot of different ideas. You got different competing notions of what's going to be successful and how's it going to be successful and all that going on. But fundamentally, a franchisor or franchisee, when you look at that situation, it's so powerful because at the end of the day, it's completely aligned interests of all the parties. And you've got different strengths. You got some at the local level, but you got others that are looking at it, in the mile-high level, what you have to do strategically. So anyway, you ball all that together, and I think I'm a little concerned, like everyone. I think about the some of the new federal regs and things like that. Uh-huh. I mean, we're going to have to work through that. You're going to look in our industry. Perfect example, at the lower end in inequality, it's going to be dealt with. It has to be dealt with, right? Yeah. So for example, we use lower paid caregivers, and right now those caregivers are getting paid a whole lot more, and there's a whole lot of fallout from that. I mean, it's wonderful for them and being able to get benefits and so forth. It's challenging for the seniors that pay for it because they're going to be paying more, and that's not just in obviously in senior care or home care. I think in a lot of franchising you see that, particularly at the lower wage structure industries. We're going to have to sort through that, but we will.
Thanks. Appreciate that. We're going to have to start wrapping up here as much as I don't want to, but can you share any of your favorite Peter Drucker or Warren Buffett lines on small business?
Wow, that's an interesting one. Yeah, I love one of my favorite lines with Drucker is always about, when we would do strategic planning, I know I would always force you to listen to some of this, but one of my favorite lines from Peter Drucker is he said, strategic planning, he said, is like driving down the road 80 miles an hour, but you're looking in the rearview mirror. The hardest thing in the world is to align yourself, of where things are going. We all are set. There are a few folks out there, crazy Elon Musk, who's just a genius. He's a mad genius in a way, and he and many others have this ability. But the second part of that is, as you'll recall, we used to say in strategic planning, it has to degenerate into work. It can't just be this, lovely thing. So I think anytime you've got a creative idea for a business, the key thing is, remember, you've got to wrap a structure where you get out there in the marketplace and you're doing it. That's the only way you ever are going to flesh it out. So it has to, get out there. And if you work at it, then you'll start seeing the future a little more clearly.
Thanks, Alan. Couldn't have wrapped it up better.
Hey, it was great to be with you. Thanks, Blake.
Absolutely. Well, this is going to wrap up another episode of the Heartland Franchise Guy. I want to say a huge thanks to Alan Hager, the founder and former chairman of the board of Right at Home and Right at Home International. Alan was a mentor to many, including myself, is a mentor to many, including myself. And you know that old saying, speaking of old sayings, about nice guys never finish first? Well, the people that printed that never met Alan. So.
Thank you so much.
So thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Alan, for being our guest today. This is going to wrap up another episode of the Heartland Franchise Guy. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
A Hurrdat Media Production.